Well, welcome to how you're being seduced into buying other people's products and services and what you can learn from these practices. And I'm sure you're going to ask asking the question now, what is all this about? And this is about actually looking at marketing, but actually starting with looking at how people are actually being successful and getting something out of you, and therefore, what can you learn from this experience? So I've just turned it on its head so just so sit back and enjoy the next 20, 25 minutes. And look, I mean, have you ever found yourself buying something that you intended to buy and you wondered that you never intended to buy and that you wondered why? And have you ever suffered from buyer's remorse? You've bought something and then you go, oh my gosh, what have I done? Well, here today, I'm going to show you actually how you can forgive yourself because it's not entirely your fault. And this is what the marketers do that gets you to spend your money and to think about, well, how can we do that? And people will listen to this will either be business owners or you'll be involved in a not-for-profit organization where you've got services that you are offering to the community. So let me get going. Okay, my name is Pat Gross, and I realized when I sat down and wrote a book last year that I've got a history of jobs that right from when I first started employment that have evolved with technology and marketing as they've gone along. I've been involved in jobs that were inputting the electoral roll to be used by a big catalogue company that will be selling. Of course, they've got the great big database of customer lists. And that was happening, how it happened about 20, 30 years ago. I was involved in promoting the internet, the World Wide Web, in the 1990s. In the 2000s, I was in government-sponsored projects that were looking at podcasting and looking at webinars. So I've always been involved somehow in the evolution of technology, and it's had its application to marketing. I was the energy behind a market leader in Europe, and what we found was we were successful and we had a system in place, and I went back to study to find out what I was doing right and use that. We were great. And then I came to Australia in 2000 and 10 years in a government role, and then started my own business, and I made the critical mistake of not building marketing in from day one. And I found myself 3 years later, actually on a 3-year journey, looking at updated marketing techniques and tools. And what I found at the end of it all was that they were just that, they were tools, and that marketing itself is the processes that they're timeless. And so I put that all together in my book, The Intuitive Marketer, which you can find in bookstores, on Amazon, on Kobo. We made sure that it's available anywhere that you look. Or we've actually got our own website, springboardtrainingsolutions.net, where you can buy it directly from there. So that's a bit about who I am. So what we're hoping to get out of today's session is an understanding of some of the psychology behind how they manage to attract you to buy and get you to buy their products and services, so that you can spot techniques that are used on you, so that you can choose how you do that, your next step, how you can react to that or prepare for that, or how you can implement in your own strategies. Okay, so yes, I'm very passionate about getting that message of marketing out there. I like to stand out from the crowd, which is something we're going to look at in the second session. So let's start with, we always have had that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And it's true. I mean, how many times now have you gone to the internet or you get an offer in the email, a free webinar, a free session, a free ebook, whatever. And there's two purposes of this. One, the obvious one, and that's that they're getting your email address and your contact details so that they can contact you in the future and try and sell products and services. But the second benefit of this free offer is that you start to build a relationship, because by taking up that offer, there's a principle of reciprocation comes into place, and you psychologically feel obliged to listen when they've got the next offer to come to you, because you've got something for free, so you feel as though you have to give back. And have a look at that in your daily lives and see how you do that, how you feel when somebody gives you something. You feel as though you have to give it back, and you tend to give back more than what you were given in the first place. So that concept, there's no such thing as a free lunch, I think actually fits perfectly well with this. The other thing to think about is when you're talking about a free, if you can offer something that's face-to-face for free, you may, if it's a product that you've got, you might have some kind of demonstration. If it's a service you've got, then we're talking about a service we've got, then we're talking about having a workshop or a training program or some kind of session that you're offering for free. So you're invited along. Now, it's a really, really good technique that you can use. And I've found that whenever I'm looking down, and we just mentioned that you end up on somebody's email list, and when I actually make sure that my we've started this webinar. We're talking about the first issue here is the free lunch, and there's no such thing as a free lunch, and we're talking about, it's about the principle of reciprocation, and you feel as though you have to give back more than you were given in the first place. Take that to the next step and say, if you've got a product, if you can offer something face-to-face, or a service that you can offer a face-to-face program, what you'll find is that, and this is what I found, is when I attend somebody's session, whatever it is, even though I might not make a close friendship with them, I've seen them in person. And when I've seen them in person, there's a relationship developed. Somehow, just by seeing somebody face to face, you tend to become that first step towards being a fan. And therefore, what happens then is that when emails come in, first of all, whenever I sign up to anything, and this is a good tip, have an email, a generic email address that you use, so you can actually treat it as your junk mail email address. And then when you just go through that the next day and you see what you want, pick out the two and then just delete the rest, rather than these offers getting lost in your own general email. And which actually clogs up your system. And then what you find is that the ones I found, that the ones I was tending to keep were the ones where I'd actually seen them face to face. So that's my advice there, is that in that free journey, if you want to offer something for free, is there something you can do face to face, because that's going to have a little bit more traction to attract that person to the next sale. So I was just sort of wanted to give you that piece of advice and a sort of a technique. Also, when it comes to the free, here I've got claim your free copy now. So if you've got a website, you may be a plumber, for example. I'm just giving an example here. If you're a plumber, then I would say you might want to give a guide to, I don't know, changing taps or whatever, something that people can look at, and I'll explain to you why that's important a little bit later on. But there's something, it doesn't matter what you do, there is something that you can offer for free on your website that somebody can download, and they can start that journey, and that's the reciprocation journey. I've also included here the arrow. And again, this is a neat trick that's being used to get you to take the next step, because there's always a call to action. And the easiest way to do that is you've got an arrow and it says click here. And as human beings, our brains tend to click here. And so that starts us on the journey. Remember, at the beginning of this session, I was saying to forgive yourself, because this is about what marketers' tactics are being used to get you to make that purchase that you probably didn't really know you wanted, but they've done it in such a way that they've grabbed your attention and you're making the purchase. So, so the first thing I wanted to look at here was the whole concept of offering something for free. And it's in your face all the time. So just give you a bit of understanding what's going on here. It's A, to get your information, but B, it's to start that journey of reciprocation. Okay, let's look at the next. And there we go. Those are some tips I've given you. I use a separate email account for anything I subscribe to. So I can just delete what I need to delete and then move it over anything to my other email addresses. Face-to-face adds to trust and increases reciprocation. Add food, that takes it all to a next level. If you're going to offer something for free, make sure it's of value, that it's of education. Don't give too much away, because otherwise why should they buy something from you? But make sure there's some value attached to it. Instruct users what you want to do, giving the idea of the arrow there. Always make sure there's a call to action. And always be the first to do something. The first, be creative, be the first to offer, blah, blah, blah. So that's what people like. You get the early adopters there. So that's so what I wanted to cover there on looking, and that's the principle of reciprocation. Let's move on. Let's have a look at the panic buy. Now, back in Christmas 1999, it was the first time in the UK that supermarkets were going to be open 24 hours over the Christmas period. And this was the day before Christmas Eve. My husband was on a late shift, so I had this brilliant idea that I'd pick him up from work and we'd go over to the supermarket late in the evening, and we'd do our shopping and ready for Christmas Eve. But everybody else had the same idea. And I found myself in this supermarket, and I would say it felt like Moscow. The shelves, there was just nothing on the shelves. And I found that we were panic buying. We were buying this, grabbing this, not necessarily because we wanted it, but because it was there and it was the last one. And we got halfway around, and then we thought, what on earth are we doing? Because everybody else was doing the same thing. And what had happened was they hadn't actually prepared for the fact they were open 24 hours, and they weren't filling the shelves fast enough. And so they ended in this situation where there was just nothing on the shelves. So we put the stuff, in fact, we just ditched the trolley. And next day we got up bright and early, went to the local supermarket that hadn't had the 24-hour opening, and of course all the shelves were full, all the staff were in high spirits and dressed up as elves, and so we had a really good experience. But that taught another lesson, and this is something else that you see a lot, which is persuading you to buy when you don't necessarily want to. Have you been to a training session or a big briefing session, and you've been right at the end of it, there's a sell, and you've got 15 minutes to sign up to this program, the first number of people, etc. Otherwise the price is going up, the offer's no longer on the table, etc., etc. That's creating the panic buy. So, you know, it's always about, it could be that you're interested in something, but whoever's trying to sell it saying, but I'm only going to sell to these people, and gives you some criteria, and you feel like you've got to qualify to buy this. Again, it's motivating that urgency, that time restraint. And that's another persuasion technique that works strongly for you to get you to buy, even though it's something that you may not want. I mean, this happened last week with me, but I'm grateful because I've got somebody in the background, and I contact her and I say blah 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 blah, and she'll say no, and she'll because it's that. she hasn't been exposed to the energy of somebody trying to sell something. And you have to, sometimes you're lucky. You get on the front end of an offer and it turns out to be the best thing since sliced bread. And because you got on the front end, you get this lifetime deal, whereas in some cases, you might, after that, you have to pay annually. So sometimes you're quite lucky, but other times it's about sucking people into that urgency factor. Another way when it comes to getting people the scarcity. This is the scarcity way of doing this. It's also actually loyalty cards and vouchers, not like the Coles cards and the Woolies cards, and you get these offers. And if you spend so much per week for the next four week, you get all these thousands of points. Again, that's making it's time limited, and it's making you go out and making you buy things that you don't necessarily need. Who needs all that food in the cupboard? But there's this offer here, and so that's the second. So we've had the free offer. That's reciprocation. We've now just quickly looked at scarcity and how we've got to get something before the offer is off the table. The third way is actually authority. And how many times, have you bought something because there's some more authority behind it? Sometimes the endorsements by pop stars and movie stars and stuff like that, they're putting their weight behind it. So it must be good because they say so. And the authority there is going to, the movie star of this world, the endorsements, the footwear, the sportswear and stuff like that. That's getting you to buy, especially if targeting young people, especially, is one way they do it because they've got somebody there with authority that they're attracted to. Now, I'm saying to you, you also need to be using authority anyway in your own roles, in your own businesses. For instance, if you are a business, it's okay to put something on the website about who you are and what you do. Just don't make it all about you. And we do this in a later session, you go on the website, it's all about what's in it for the customer, what's in it for me. But somewhere along there, the second stage of thinking is, who is this person? Who is this company? That's when you put in your authority there. And we actually tend to be a little bit timid about that in many cases. And I'm saying to you, don't be frightened to be the tall poppy, because if you're not that one standing out from the crowd, why are you in business? When it comes to not-for-profits, that's the other side, is the authority there may be the experience that you've had as an organization, and your influence that you might have in decision making. If it's training, and I know because I've been doing research with businesses, they want to know the qualifications. Why are of the trainers? Not necessarily the organizations, which is good, but they also want to know about the trainers and why are they qualified to be teaching them about whatever their industry base is. So that's, it's really good there that you would have the authority. Okay. Testimonials, that's one way of getting, of showing the authority here, is getting other people and referrals. That's one way of being able to get your message out there without, feeling like the tall poppy. So if you have got, it's like people want to see that people like them have benefited before they make the purchase. So if you've got testimonials, make sure those testimonials are about the results that they get from the service that you're trying, or product that you're trying to sell to the people who are looking in. Not a testimonial about how good you are, but more about the impact that you have had. That's what gives you the authority. And also, you know, the referrals are a fantastic way of getting business. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is that trust, that credibility, people are listening to other people, and that's what's coming back to you. So, you know, these are really good of actually proving your authority. Another way to do this, and you'll find this if you're listening to a presenter, and they will go into their story. Now, why are they doing that? Because they're touching at the heartstrings, because they're aligning with you and your circumstances, and they found their way out of the problem. What does that do? It gives them authority. So I would recommend, as I said, this is about what they're doing to you, but also how you can use that in your own product or service delivery, is do not fear. You do have a story. You might not think you do, but what you're doing is you're aligning to somebody. If you think you're just a normal person, you align yourself to other normal people. You know what their problems are. You know what their desires are because you've been through it yourself. So just watch out for that when people start to tell your story. Another way your story can be used, let me just move on, is when it comes to negotiation. Now, again, this is another one, sort of a principle here, and that's where it's around consistency. And basically what happens, and you'll find this, imagine the car salesman, and he's trying to sell you something, or he's going to sell you the car. Okay, what's he doing? And when he's asking you questions, he's trying to find your story. And if you listen to them, how can he then align himself to you? Okay, there's two things happening here. One is going to align himself to you, and he's going to tell you a story, and you're going to go, yeah, that's me. I totally understand you, mate, but he's already found that information. It's a bit like the fortune teller, the one who's actually already done the homework. They're doing the homework on you. But the second, but the most important thing that they're getting out of you, and this is what you really need to watch when the really good salespeople are, is that they're finding your base position, your values, the one thing that you're not going to give up. And you could ask, you know, a good example is you may, and I'm using the idea of having promoting something, and you know very well that if you went to ask somebody something outrageous about, I don't know, thinking about the local, I'm thinking putting a billboard in your garden, for example. Okay, you wouldn't do that, would you? But if somebody came to you a few, earlier, and actually, and this is some research that's been done, and I'll explain where it's come from in a couple of slides. But if somebody comes to you a few weeks previously and talks about environmental concerns or something, and says, you know, will you put this card in your window, right? And I'm thinking also about voting. You know, you might be prepared to put something discreet in your window. And then next time around, they'll come back to you a few weeks later and ask you to do something bigger, because you've already agreed, or your values agreed to do something at this level because of this principle that you have. You feel as if you're obliged to take it to the next step. And you listen to anybody who's good at negotiation, they will find your bottom line, and they will come back to you and say, you've done this, you know, blah, blah, blah. How about taking it to the next level? And you'll find that you're actually doing something that you might not have done had they come straight to you in the beginning and said, I want this. So it's a bit like when they try and sell you, you know, a level of services. So they'll come in and might offer you the freebie, the $97, the $4.97, etc., etc. If for some people, just to start small, and then go bigger because they've already got value? Or do you go straight to somebody and say, I can do this for $10,000, depending on your market? Do you see what I mean? They might go to $10,000 if you've had some baseline success with them in the first place. So that's what I call defending your position. And if somebody is trying to sell you something and you get to it and you say no, they're going to come back to you. That's an objection or whatever. And they're going to come back to you and they're going to try and get back to that position where they know that your base value is, and they'll play on that. It's a very good technique. And what you'll find is just listen in the future. I mean, I really love it now when I listen to something and then I get somebody ringing me up the next day from the team and they're trying to sell me a product. And all I'm doing, sorry, I'm probably the worst nightmare, is listening to their script and how they go back to that, defending that level. So because I know how it works, I can say no. But can you imagine getting caught in that and finding yourself buying something that you probably had no intention of buying in the first place because you've been manipulated through this strategy? So that's what I call the negotiator's card. All right, so that's what I'm saying, stop. If you find that somebody is he's going through what I call a script, and he's coming back down to your emotions and your bottom line, and then building on that. That's when I see ethically I can say, no, stop, I don't want to know anymore. This is where it is. So they don't call me again for some reason. All right. The other principle here that I want to explore is that we all like to be like other people. We all like to be liked. And therefore, that again, I've already mentioned it in a couple of examples here. But that's why we like to, I'm thinking about the clever USP here. If you support a football team, okay, and when you talk about the football team, you talk about we. Yes, we. You're not the team, but you feel part of this family. We all feel part of this community. Okay. And that's how people can sell to you once you feel as if you're committed to something. So you'll find that you'll end up, use that as a good example, you get football strips, etc., all these things because you feel as though you're part of a community. It's us and them, and you're part of us. If your team was losing, your language would change automatically, and it would be them. Now, what happens when somebody tries to sell you something is that they will find that connection and start talking about us and we. So that's what they're doing with you. As I said, they find that consistency, that value, align themselves to that value, and they're building your trust because they're part of your team now. You're part of their team. You're supporting the same team. So their language is we and us. And that's another way that gets people to want to buy from them, because there's that know, like, and trust is already happening. And then that's where the bigger brands, the branding comes in as well, because if you've got a really good brand, people know what that brand stands for and they feel part of that brand. So I'm just giving you examples there, is that how people aligning themselves to your values or to something in your history that they make that connection with, you feel connected to them and you feel more likely to want to buy from them in that conversation. Afterwards, you wonder what on earth went on, and you might just go, because you know that they've just done a sales tactic on you, but that's what's going on. So again, how can you use those strategies in your own environment? Not for evil, but for good. Okay, another way of looking at that is Again, this is the urgency. This is that need to be ahead of the crowd. Your latest fashion, something that's happening, and again, it's part of that. Everybody wants to be part of that team. Everybody wants it, and we're looking at. And I've given a couple of examples there. Can you imagine? Remember, was it 2016, 2017 when everybody was on Pokemon Go? We all had to have it. You feel like, you know, you've got to do that because everybody else is doing it. I mentioned Barcode Battler because that reminds me when my kids were really young and it was Christmas, and Barcode Battler came out at Christmas time, of course, and my son wanted it and we couldn't find it, and we searched all over. I feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that film. And, you know, we finally got it. It was everything, you know. We were compelled to buy it, even though we'd bought him everything that he wanted. But he wanted Barcode Battler, and you know what? It was the biggest pile of rot ever. But we were sucked in. So this is part of that. We all want to be part of a crowd, and this is when the marketers can be come in and use that. Use that in combination with scarcity, you know, or timing, to actually make you want to buy. So where have I got all this from? Well, actually, I cannot, you know, can't take the underlying credit for this. This is actually a book from Dr. Robert Cialdini, The Psychology of Persuasion, called Influence. And there are 6 areas. Now, one is reciprocation, which I'll say is used wildly now when it comes to the freebie. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You feel as though you have to give back, and you tend to give back more than what you gave in the first place. So if you're the first one in that conversation, of course, then you're in the leading edge. But just be mindful of that. That's what people are doing. It's not necessarily just to get your details, it's to start a relationship. Scarcity, when I talked about the panic buy and stuck in the supermarket, we do that. We react. We can't help it. We react. And if something's going to be off the shelf in 5 minutes, we need that. We want to buy it now. So again, you know, just step back and think: do we really need this? Is there another way of doing this? Showing your authority is great, especially if people want, or businesses want to know that they've got, you know, it's coming from a credible source. Being consistent. And one of the things we tend to do is we can, in businesses and even in not-for-profits, we can be inconsistent. We do things because we need to do it because there's an urgency, and then don't carry it, and then don't do anything for a while after that. And so a good example is the emails and, you know, consistency of somebody supplying you some information, and then they stop for a while and you forget about them, and then you're back again and you go, who are these people? Junk mail. So that's just an example. If you're going to do something, be consistent in doing it, not just a little bit here, a little bit there. Because if it's consistent, then people begin to know you better, but also consistent in terms of if you can get down to the personnel or what's really driving these people, their values, that's the consistency level, and everything above that may go up and down. But if you're trying to negotiate with somebody, if you can get to that consistency level and match that consistency level, you know that you've got a good framework to work from. Liking, you know, we all know, like and trust anybody, it's like ourselves, we're all part of the team. This is where social media and liking comes in, but I'm not sure it works as well as it should do. And then that consensus, you know, everybody has to buy this, everybody blah blah blah. So these are actually in this book as examples, but I just wanted them to bring them to life here. And I would say to you that read it, and I said this is not so much about selling us. This is, as I said, it's lunch and learn basically. Is read it once, read it twice, read it 3 times. I've done that, and I find something different in it every time. So it gives you a good idea of what people are doing, the marketers are doing, that's getting you to buy from them, and how and why. It's really good reading. So some takeaway advice. Be mindful when you create free downloads, how you can respectfully create reciprocation, not keep bombarding them with offers, blah, 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 blah. Give them something of value, and get them to like you. Give us some education content without actually, giving away everything. And just respectful of them until they get to know you. And that's a good way of, getting that relationship. Create your authority is okay. You can be the tall poppy. In fact, you should be the tall poppy if you want to survive. And if you don't want to do it, or you sort of, I call it the English syndrome, where we tend to sort of the stiff upper lip type thing, is get somebody to give you a testimonial review. Somebody else do it to what you're selling, or tell your story. So, there are subtle ways that you can show your authority without going out there banging the drum and the fig jam approach. Read through the scripts. I call read through the scripts. So when somebody's listening, trying to sell you some things, just try and look at the technicality of the scripts to identify where that consensus is and that commitment, and take back your power to say no if that's what you want. So those are just some ideas there. And next time, so I said this is just a quick session here. It's not meant to be a full hour or anything as the webinar. But we're looking at how successful business can stand out from the crowd and what you can learn from them, how you can stand out from the crowd. So that's what we're going to cover next week. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open up to the floor. But just to look at this is this is me. This is The Intuitive Marketer is my book, and as I mentioned at the early in session, I actually didn't mention that as I go through the book, I've also got checklists for different aspects of marketing. It's actually a broad range marketing publication, even though it's me, I'm saying it's worth a read. So at this point, I'm going to